Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 66 for Monday, November 18th. Holy crap, it's the middle of November already. The year is 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is my friend Johnny, but you may know him better as Pixel Riffs of Minecraft Earth, Solar System, Orion Spiral Arm, Milky Way Galaxy, Virgo Supercluster, the Universe. Hello, sir.
I'm having flashbacks to the way I used to address things to myself when we wrote letters at school. That was, for whatever reason, that seems to be a thing that everybody did as a kid, was just like elongate your address, because I found out about space and it's so exciting to me. Yes, here we are, executing podcast 66, and that's a joke I stole from the Hermitcraft recap episode with the same number, but I think it was kind of fitting, considering that, by the way, I wanted to, we didn't mention this in the pre-show, but we did have a good talk about your new PC in the pre-show, so patrons can listen to that. You can get access to the extended version by going to patreon.com/thespawnchunks. But I wanted to kind of give a quick shout out to your other podcast, The Citadel Cafe, because I really enjoyed you chatting to Lou about The Mandalorian the other day. I know your conversation was quite spoiler free, but as somebody who lives in Europe and doesn't have access to Disney Plus yet, kind of interested in people's opinions about The Mandalorian, and with Star Wars stuff sort of floating around in my mind as the year draws to a close and we get closer to that next movie, I'm kind of excited. None of this is about Minecraft, by the way, so sorry, but maybe go watch Logical Geek Boy's Let's Play and you'll see a lot of Star Wars and Minecraft crossover. But yeah, Citadel Cafe episode about The Mandalorian, spoiler-free, very good discussion, enjoyed it a great deal.
Thanks very much. I think that was 338 just from last week, if I remember correctly, so yeah. Let us know what you think about that show, folks, because there's not a lot of people have access to Disney Plus, so I'm always interested to hear.
Yes, absolutely. So, when you've not been watching The Mandalorian, what have you been doing in Minecraft this week?
Well, here's the fun thing about The Mandalorian. It only comes out once a week. They're not releasing the whole series, in one chunk. It's a weekly rollout. So everybody is basically champing at the bit between Fridays, wondering what the crap they're going to do.
Yes.
So I played quite a lot of Minecraft this weekend because there was no Star Wars that I could watch.
Fair enough.
Yes. And I was in the Nether again. Surprise, surprise. But it's almost finished. I say that the Nether is not almost finished. It's never done. But the rooms that kind of encircle my Nether hub, all of which go in a different direction, and instead of having signs up, the design of the room indicates whether you're going to a sandstone desert, a green and lush swamp, etc., etc. So I'm finishing up the last final rooms. We did some really cool Prismarine work over the weekend. Accidentally designed a Cthulhu room, so there's that. Yeah,
that sounds immense. I need to go back and find that.
I stumbled upon it. It was really quite funny. And the chat room, as soon as I did it, I went, "Oh, that kind of looks like a squid." And then the chat room just went, "Cthulhu!" And I was like, "Yes, okay. The room shall be named the Cthulhu room from now on. There's no escaping that." But poignantly, I was working yesterday with concrete and glazed terracotta. Two things I don't do a lot of. In the Nether, the main Nether hub is mostly like stonework and creepy, evil, fire and lava and stuff. So all the other rooms tend to be using stone to kind of mesh a little bit better. There's a little bit of glass, a little bit of quartz, but most of it is stone. And so I did this room where it's mostly glass and concrete. Boy, do you run into a bottleneck when you're trying to make things look different, but want to use different blocks like concrete and terracotta, because you're stuck. There's no real alternative forms like you have with stones that have endless versions now of stairs and slabs, except for the cracked ones, and all that kind of stuff. So I really kind of felt the hurt trying to make something look like it matched the rest of the builds in the area, but also use new blocks. And so it was still fun. It was something I discovered quite by accident. Not all concrete works this way, but the purple glazed terracotta and the purple concrete are the exact same color in the background. So you can put them next to each other, and instead of the glazed terracotta having a hard edge, it will just bleed seamlessly into a connected texture with the purple concrete. Boy, does it look cool, because then you can use it as a one block border and it doesn't look like a repetitive or it looks like a repetitive pattern, but it looks more like a trim than it does something that's part of something else. And so I quite enjoyed it. We've stumbled upon some stuff. We designed things live on stream, so it took like 3 hours because there was a lot of like, well, what does this look like? And you tear it down and you put it back up again. And so it was fun. But that's essentially what my weekend was just mulling around in the dark in the Nether again.
Yeah. Designing eldritch horrors as you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Did you work with much concrete? I know. I mean, I'm behind on your survival guide, but like when it comes to concrete and stuff, do you run into the same frustrations, or because of your current aesthetic in the survival guide, are you have enough stairs and slabs and stuff with wood and stone that you're fine?
yeah, I'm mostly working on kind of medieval fantasy kind of builds, so I don't use concrete all that much. The stuff I use it for tends to be occasional. It's accent blocks in various places, and yeah, for the most part, it's just like it's modern builds if I want to use concrete. So typically, it has a lot of clean lines and stuff that suits the block shape very well anyway, and all of the other stuff that I can work in around it is materials like wood that has stairs and slabs anyway. So yeah, it hasn't come up all that much. Speaking of concrete, though, I cannot wait for them to bring concrete to Minecraft Earth, or any kind of like solid colored block that we can get in decent quantities, because I've been starting to design these Minecraft micro builds, is what I'm calling them. I've started designing builds that are going to be tutorial builds going up on my channel about the size of something that you could put on a Minecraft Earth build plate. So an 8x8 or potentially a 16x16, but I have a bunch of those one chunk builds already, and I feel like 8x8 is probably going to be the most common one because that's the one that you get by default, right? You know,
Right.
you have to buy the 16x16 plates, and I now have enough rubies that I can buy one of the most expensive plates from the store. They're like 375 rubies, which as a dollar amount works out to about $10. But I've earned all of these rubies through like playing the game, which has been probably like 2 weeks worth of play now, and I can get
Mm-hmm.
a couple of the 16x16 plates if I'm not picky about which ones, but all of the best ones, the ones that have like unique resources or unique mobs attached to them, are all more pricey. But anyway, I'm sticking to 8x8 size, and I'm finding the material restrictions of Minecraft Earth are bringing to bear on my designs a little bit, because I designed a few different things. I put out one tutorial already that's like a rustic house, and I went with height kind of as the feature of it, because in an 8x8 space, you can't move sideways a great deal, but you can build up almost infinitely, it seems like, in Minecraft Earth. People have, started a build plate and then gone up the stairs and carried on building to see how high they could get, and I think it goes higher than 256, unless somebody was
Really?
counting wrong. Yeah, it's really weird. It just seems to generate more space as you need it with no visible build limit, unless, like I said, somebody's maths was a little bit off. But yeah, it's an interesting environment, and I'm not building that high at all because that would be ridiculous probably for most people. But I've decided that the best way to cope with the lack of horizontal space is to go vertical. So I have a rustic house that's got a large tower on one corner of it. That's only a 3x3 tower, so you couldn't really fit much. But typically in Minecraft Earth, you're not going to be building interiors all that much anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm working on designs for castles and windmills, and I built a tree house that I was really happy with. And I did all of these on stream. I tried to do a pirate ship, kind of like my one chunk pirate ship, at a diagonal so that you had a little bit more space to work with, but it didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to, despite the fact that we put a llama on the ship as the captain at the at the behest of my stream chat. But yeah, it's starting to get a little bit obvious to me how limited the materials are in Minecraft Earth, where you're only working with 3 types of wood, because all we have right now is oak, birch, and spruce. There is no acacia, there is no dark oak, there is no jungle wood you can get, but once again you can only get it from build plates, and you can't regrow the jungle wood at that point. So there are no saplings in Minecraft Earth yet. There's no bone meal to grow them either. So it's yeah, without tappables it is impossible to get 3 of the wood types that we're used to from regular Minecraft. So yeah, once again, I'm hamstrung a little bit by that and trying to work around that. I'm trying to figure out how I can do a modern build without using terracotta or concrete, and it's tricky. It is tricky, but
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the designs I've gotten so far. One thing I plan to do is to go back to the Lego website where you found the inspiration for your Inn on a Bridge build, and see if I can
Lego ideas. Yeah.
Yes, and see if Lego Ideas has anything that I could potentially get inspiration from to adapt into a build that would fit an 8x8 thing. Because I was looking at them as I was designing them and going, these just feel like Lego sets. It's
You
like
should-
having a toy Minecraft world that you're working with.
You should look up micro builds in in Lego. So that's
Yeah.
a whole other subgenre where it's not minifig scale, like it's actually meant to be even smaller.
Right. Okay.
There's even a couple of play sets that utilize that scale because, for example, Buckingham Palace, that would be a ginormous Lego set.
Yes, it would.
The architecture series from Lego, things like Frank Lloyd Wright, I think Big Ben is one of them.
Right. Yeah.
And then the Sydney Opera House. So they do a couple of things like that where they have like specific connections in smaller Lego pieces. And so something like a 1x2 plate in Lego, which is a very thin piece with a smooth top, that would end up being what looks like 6 Minecraft blocks,
Right.
in slabs form. So that's the kind of scale. It's a really micro scale, and it's really interesting because people obviously build like really cool cities that can be quite large, but very intricate. Things that a Lego piece that would meant to be a grill on the front of a truck ends up being a single window in a high rise because of the scale difference, and
Right.
and the piece is just repurposed for that kind of scale. So that would be really, really cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to those. That's a really neat idea. So when I read micro builds in the notes, I had something else in mind in Minecraft, because when I hear micro builds in Minecraft, I don't think Minecraft Earth or small build plates. I think the stuff where people try to make mini versions of landscapes in Minecraft, like where they take like stairs and slabs and they try to make it look like mountains.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, as though you've got like a kind of bonsai version of something, like a tiny
Yes.
tree, and like
Yeah.
people making trees using fence posts and stuff like that as well.
Stuff like that. Yeah. Is that what you're going for? Or are you going for like still Minecraft scale, but Minecraft Earth build plate limitations?
That's what I'm aiming for. The latter really is
Mhm.
trying to build something that still looks like a Minecraft house. And the idea is, I think the way a lot of people are going to try and build in Minecraft Earth, either for the resource limitations because they haven't gathered enough tappables and stuff yet, or because they are used to Minecraft being this kind of environment, is they're going to build a house in one corner of the build plate, and they're going to leave a lot of the rest of the build plate as landscape, as though like you can walk up to this house. Whereas I'm trying to use every part of the build plate in creative ways where possible. So the structures do reach the edges. And I've got a castle that's I'm trying to build with like a 5x5 footprint or a 3x3 footprint, and doing that kind of modular sort of thing where you just attach squares to each other to make a more dynamic shape. And I think that's really paying off, because what you end up with is a much more dynamic layout to something which could otherwise, you could just fill out the 8x8 build plate and build an 8x8 block of a house, but then you'd have nowhere to build overhangs or anything that would really give the exterior of the build some character. So the design process of these is it's a little bit of trial and error, but it's coming more naturally to me now that I've realized that what you really want to be doing is, overlapping shapes and building stuff that's like on corners and diagonals and things. The entrance to the 8x8 castle build that I made actually has the gate coming in on a diagonal, which sounds like inefficient use of the space, but it makes perfect sense when you look at it. I'll have to send you over a screenshot after we're done podcasting, because I'm really happy with how that one turned out. That's probably going to be the next tutorial, which will hopefully go up next weekend. Aside from that, I haven't been doing absolutely everything in Minecraft Earth. I have been back in the survival guide, although the micro builds thing was kind of a good excuse to talk about structure blocks. So that was today's episode, and I think I'm probably going to do some stuff with note blocks this week. I feel like having a musical interlude to the survival guide and exploring some of the possibilities of especially the newer note block sounds. So I'm going to get into that this week. But a lot to unpack there, I think.
Very, very cool. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. I know this is a little off topic, but the music in The Mandalorian is quite unique, and I think that you will really enjoy it. I'm curious, as someone that appreciates that kind of stuff, it sounds like something that could also be translated into Minecraft note blocks quite easily.
I expect somebody has done that already. Some fan out there will probably have posted it on the Minecraft subreddit by the time we're done.
So if you're looking for a tune to maybe use as a subject, that could be kind of fun.
There we go.
I'm curious with the... I was going to ask you something about the survival guide. The number of episodes that you have, like, do you now have like a little index, like a library of like, I did this in this episode, like I have not covered structure blocks, and you know that because all of your notes say like, hey, that's nowhere's in these first 200 episodes.
I've still got a long list of stuff that I want to cover. Like I've had a notepad document for a while that I'm just slowly deleting stuff from when I've covered certain things, and I have quite a good memory for what I've already done. And if I have to go back and search for it in the long list of videos, then I can probably approximate where it is, and then, you know, let the YouTube dashboard fill me in on exactly which episode something happened. Like, I can't remember episode numbers for everything if I'm writing a reply to somebody, but I'll take the time to look up, like, oh, it was episode 59 that we raided the Woodland Mansion or something like that, just so people have some idea of the context. But yeah, it is definitely becoming apparent that there is potentially more that I have done than I have not yet done. You know, I feel like we are potentially past the halfway point of Survival Guide, but then I feel like in future the episodes are just going to keep coming from new features they add to the game and fun stuff I can do with that, and then build projects, and then I still haven't even started the museum, which is almost going to be like revision at that point. It's going to be like, okay, what have we learned from the last little while? What can we put on display in this museum project that's going to represent all of the stuff that we've learned so far in the Survival Guide series as a whole?
Cool. I asked because someone asked me what was my favorite episode of the Spawn Chunks over the weekend. I was just like, 65 hours of content. I have no idea. Like, I don't remember what we talked about 2 weeks ago, let alone last year.
Yeah, I'm the same at this point. The podcasts tend to get a little bit more rambly as well. So if it's
not as poignant.
We try and stay focused when we can, but a lot of the time the conversation just meanders naturally, and it's nice. Whereas with the tutorial stuff, I'm like, okay, I definitely covered this subject at this point, so it's a little bit easier to catalog. Let's move on to the news, though, because we've got a little bit of news this week. It's not been quite as dry as previous weeks have been, and we have a new snapshot for Java Edition. This is 19W46A, and the changes to that are numerous, and some of them are to do with bees. For a start, experience orbs now appear in the same location as loot when an entity is killed, so you're going to get the XP from shooting that ghast right where the ghast tear drops, which is useful because I've been trying to farm ghast tears, and I can't find them for the life of me after I kill a ghast. I always find the XP and then not the ghast tear or the gunpowder, so good change. I like that one. Bees now only exit through the front of the nest/hive. All foods are now edible in creative mode. There are a few performance improvements. There are added advancements for bees and for honey, which are as follows. Sticky situation for jumping into a honey block to break your fall. Bee our guest for safely collecting honey from a beehive using a campfire. And total bee location for moving a bee nest with 3 bees inside using Silk Touch. There are also a bunch of bug fixes. We'll have a link to the Minecraft.net article with the changelog if you guys want to take a look through those. They are mostly kind of animation or rendering bugs since they've implemented this new rendering engine and they are working out the kinks. We have a couple of other Twitter pieces of news. Minecraft Earth in early access, of course, hit the United States last Tuesday, day after the podcast. And Minecraft Earth also has a pop-up event happening in New York, Sydney, and London, in which the Jolly Llama has been introduced as exclusive to those locations for the next few weekends. I think it happened last weekend, and then it's going to be this weekend, and next weekend you can go and find this Jolly Llama, which is a llama kind of decorated to look like a reindeer. That was the reindeer that we presumed was in their Twitter post last week. And I think there's like a QR code you can scan, and then the Jolly Llama pops up either on your phone or it's in an adventure or something like that. That is going to be available to everybody globally from, I think, December 2nd, they said. Like, whatever the weekend is that leads us into December, after that, the Jolly Llama is going to be available to everybody. So don't worry if you're not in London, New York, or Sydney, you will still get it. You'll just get it a couple of weeks later. It's exclusive to those locations until then.
I think it's a neat idea to just kind of like encourage different locations to be out and exploring Minecraft Earth, but not restrict it. Like not say, oh well, it's only going to be in those places. It's the Jolly Llama will eventually be available for everybody, but for now we're just launching it in these few places.
I have never been so tempted to take an impromptu trip to London, Joel. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I've been thinking about Minecraft Earth so much, but I kind of went like, can I spare the time? And then I went, no, make a tutorial instead. So I did that. But I am actually going to be in London for a friend's housewarming party later this month. So I might try and swing by the South Bank and get myself a llama, but that's definitely going to be like if it's on the way to something else. I'm not going to go out of my way for it necessarily. And people who are in London do seem to be enjoying it. I've seen a few Instagram pictures, been following the Minecraft Earth hashtag on Twitter, and seen a few of those popping up. But yeah, the Jolly Llama is going to be worldwide for everybody else. So anyone who had their gripes about that, don't worry. It's just a temporary thing that it's exclusive to those places.
Yeah. So I haven't been playing Minecraft Earth again in the last week or so, but I want to be clear that it's got nothing to do with any kind of poor performance on my phone. It's November in Canada.
Yes, it is. It's starting to snow. I imagine it's getting much, much colder there.
I've wanted to play. I was walking back from the market on a Saturday and I thought, ooh, I've often seen adventures down along the waterfront. I know. I'll plan to bring my phone and my battery pack, and on the way home from the market, I'll play Minecraft Earth. It was all I could do to get home from the market without frostbite.
Yeah. I commend your enthusiasm, though, Joel. It's nice to see that you're at least getting the urge to try these things out.
Well, see, the thing here is that it's just cold enough where you'd have to wear gloves. It's not freezing. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be much colder come January, February in Canada. But it kind of dawned on me that October, November is a really odd time of year to launch an outside mobile app in the Northern Hemisphere. So have fun, Australia.
Yeah.
Enjoy your Christmas and summertime vacation with Minecraft Earth, because the rest of us are going to have a hard time playing, I think.
That's the thing. I'm kind of wondering, like, I presume that the full release of this app is not all that far away, but Pokemon Go released in the summer holidays. And yes. I imagine that got a lot more people playing because for the Northern Hemisphere, as you said, it was nice out. So I kind of feel like, yeah, it's slightly mistimed, but then again, they might think, oh, people are going to be getting new devices around Christmas, and maybe they'll be able to go out with them after that. You know, that I'm not sure quite how the sort of business brain side of these things work, or if they're just excited to have the app in a usable state for people. But
September is often, back to school is often new phone, new iPad month, new tablet, new computer month. Like a lot of that kind of stuff comes out, if not in time for Black Friday, which is in a couple of weeks. A week. It's usually in time for the fall semester, that sort of thing. I want to give a shout out to Whitebush from our Discord that has mentioned something that I have been meaning to bring up on the podcast for as long as we've been talking about Minecraft Earth. The first thing I noticed when I open up the app is, as Whitebush suggested, ambient sounds.
Yes, there's bird song. Yes.
bird song. And I really want that in forests and plains in Minecraft. Like, boy, does it add a lot.
Yes, it really does. And yeah, like ambient sound is something we've even dedicated like a decent portion of the show to in the past.
Yes,
we've had it come up on like roundtable discussions for ages, and
that was kind of Whitebush's point. They were just kind of like, how have they not mentioned this on the show?
It kind of slipped our mind with all of the other stuff to unpack about Minecraft Earth, but that is true, and it's kind of funny because the birds do sound like the birds that we get around here. So sometimes I have to unplug my headphones for a second and go, is that them or is that the phone? I can't quite tell as I'm walking to and from the shop. But then if I'm walking at 5 o'clock at night when it's already dark, then it's probably less likely to be the real life birds and more likely to be
do you hear
birds.
them at night? I never thought about checking at night. And forgive me if I'm remembering incorrectly. Is there also wind? I feel like there's a wind noise in Minecraft Earth. I could be wrong. I feel like there's a gentle breeze. I could be remembering that, but
there might be. I'm not sure. Not sure about that. They could potentially add weather and stuff in future. It's definitely something that other apps have done, and it'd be interesting to see if that changes the dynamic of things. Because while the weather system in Minecraft is not vastly sophisticated, there are weather cycles, there is rain, there are storms. I wonder if it's possible to get a charged creeper in Minecraft Earth, or will be after a while, and whether that's going to be local to the weather that you're having presently or not. If it's raining where you are, is it going to be raining in the app, or what's going to tie it to that?
Are you ready for that kind of weather in Minecraft Earth in the UK?
It'd be raining here more often than not. It'd be like being on a multiplayer server in real Minecraft and nobody sleeps when it's just raining all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Basically, yeah. That's the problem we've probably had in the UK, is nobody's been sleeping to get rid of the rain. That's the problem we've had. All right. I think we should move on to Chunk Mail, though, because this is a Chunk Mail dispenser episode. This is one of the episodes we like to do every month in which we can receive a lot of email from our inbox and answer it all in the main discussion. If you want to email the show, of course, you can do so at thespawnchunks@gmail.com. And we have a couple of we have a couple of email topics, rather, that were related to some of the stuff we talked about on the show previously that we wanted to address first. In particular, we had a couple of people write in to explain their kind of experience of playing in the 1.15 snapshots in Java Edition, because of the concerns we've had about performance with 1.14 over the last little while, and 1.15 having a lot of performance fixes and bug fixes, and hopefully this is going to be a little bit better. So this one comes from Ashley M. Thank you, Ashley, for your email. Which says, "Hi, Joel and Pix. I was listening to your most recent episode of The Spawn Chunks, and you'd asked for input from anyone who'd been playing on a snapshot server. I have been playing for a few weeks on a server running the snapshots with a few friends. There are 6 of us. While I haven't noticed any glaring differences with all the new fixes coming out, I have found the server runs suspiciously smoothly when multiple people are logged in. When you compare this to the 1.14.4 server I also play on, when multiple people are all on, the server struggles to keep up. All the small bug fixes and the cleaning up being done in the snapshots may not alter gameplay in any major way. However, together they make the game more enjoyable overall. Even if it's not immediately noticeable, all of the polishing up is definitely making a positive difference. Thanks for the great content you guys make. Love the show. Ashley." I'll go right into the next email because this is from Arian J along the same lines. Says, "Hey, Johnny and Joel, my name is Norvix. I've been listening to the podcast for a couple of months now, and I've found that your podcast is the perfect thing to listening to while mining or doing grindy stuff in Minecraft. Thank you very much. In episode 65, you mentioned you'd like to hear from a survival SMP player who plays in the snapshots and how they feel it works for themselves. I feel like the 1.15 snapshots are a lot more usable than the 1.14 snapshots, to say nothing about 1.13. In my world, I feel like everything runs well and smoothly. Everything seems like it's running in good quality. I've played on the world since the start of 1.15 snapshots, and I feel like everything is going to look good for 1.15 when it's released. Norvix." So thank you both for those emails, and I've only heard good things about the performance so far. It's definitely one of those things that I think I'll believe it when I see it, because right now, with my patron server especially, we're having a lot of lag issues. Like if there's more than 2 or 3 people on in different areas of the server at a time, it does get a little bit laggy. But hearing that there's a server out there with like 6 people, presumably there will be times when you're all playing at once or close enough, and that it's actually running kind of smoothly, then that's good. And good that you've got another server on 1.14 to compare it to.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed the poor performance on the Citadel running 1.14.4 when multiple people are logged on, and I'm talking 3. That is at the point when we start to see some real issues. Now, it's mostly player tracking and chunk loading. So when I come out of the Nether, if there's no one in the overworld or no one in those chunks, it takes a long time. Like I can well outfly the chunk rendering now. And it feels weird. It's a little bit, it breaks the immersion. Like you come out of the Nether portal and the only thing rendered are the first 2 chunks in front of you, and then everything else is just blue. And so that's a little bit weird. But the other thing about player tracking is weird. You notice it when you're eating. You notice it when you go around a corner and you literally are put back 20 blocks by the server. And it's like this weird deja vu blip. And you're like, whoa, wow, I just did this. Why am I walking through this door again? And so I've only noticed that, though, when we have more than one person, usually 3 people loaded on the Citadel. 3 is not a lot for a multiplayer server. And I haven't mentioned this much on the show before because the Citadel is a really low-key server. And for the last little while, especially with 1.14.4, I was really the only one on most of the time that I was playing, which means that I was essentially getting a single-player server experience. But now that we've got a couple new members and some of the members that were playing or were not playing are now back, we're starting to see some of the lag kind of crop up. So I'm starting to see that 14.4 server complaint that many people are logging over the last little while. I feel like if the feedback remains consistent with the release of the holiday bees and bugs updates, then I'm really looking forward to it. It sounds like things are being smoothed out. We had more than one email from people playing in snapshots. And thank you very much for everybody that wrote in. For those that don't know, we read everything. We may not have time to fit it all into the show, but we do actually take a time to read everything. And essentially the message was the same. 1.15, while they're working through the kinks, it does seem to be quick. Like the server performance seems to be good. Sometimes things are rendering weird, but it's not laggy, which is good feedback to know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that's it for the 115 stuff we wanted to read, but we have a variety of other emails. How about you read this one from Aaron?
Sure. This is Aaron, or AK33. Hello, Joel and Pix. Hope you are both doing well. In the past, Joel has talked about his custom texture pack. I was wondering, what program do you use to edit textures, and where do you get the base texture, or do you completely start from scratch? Also, Pixel Riffs, will you ever consider doing a survival guide on how to make a custom texture pack? Thanks for the amazing podcast, Aaron/AK33. I can dig into this real quick. It's a pretty simple answer. I use Photoshop, which is from the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription that I have to edit textures. Granted, I have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud because I subscribe for my professional artwork. So I have access to the whole suite. You don't need that. That's just my preferred platform. If you want to check out a YouTube channel for pixel art, check out Mort, M-O-R-T. He has tutorial videos on pixel art, sometimes textures. Often he'll do stuff about curves or sprite building and stuff like that. But it's all information that you could use to help you create better textures. One of my favorite videos that he did was about a game tile. So something like Stardew Valley or these other 8-bit games or 16-bit games would have game tiles. And so he goes in detail about how to create one and how to build a level. Really, really cool stuff. I think you'd enjoy it. In his videos, he does also point out a couple of other software pieces that people can use to create pixel art. Asprite, AESPRITE.org is one of the things that he suggests, as well as Pixlr. I don't think he suggested Pixlr. I just looked it up before the show. Pixlr is a free online piece of software that allows you to edit pixel art. Asprite is something that you have to buy, but it's only $15 US. And so that is a pretty easy purchase for software that does what it says it's going to do. And in my experience, and this is just my opinion, it's always better to have a little bit of money down on an app rather than the free version. Free stuff, especially online stuff, like what happens if your file doesn't save? What happens with all the stuff that you're doing? I feel like a little bit more control, and having an app that you pay a little bit for is probably going to go a long way. I've also watched Mort use Asprite, and it seems like a pretty straightforward thing to use, so I think you might.
Fun fact, that's actually what I used to create both the current Pixel Riffs logo, that's just kind of boxy text with a blue stripe across it, and the channel header banner thing that I have on my main YouTube channel, not on Twitter or anywhere else as far as I recall. But yeah, I've used that program myself, and as somebody who has relatively low artistic inclinations, it's very easy to use, and it's super fun. The one gripe I have with it is that the interface is also designed like it's, you know, an old school program, and I kind of want it to use more modern menu structure and stuff because it does feel a little bit limited, and it uses like pixel text and stuff for all of the interface. But aside from that, the program is pretty easy to use. The layering stuff is good. It's also got like animation stuff built into it. So if that's something you're interested in getting into for like sprite design for other games and stuff as well, that's super interesting to do. And I used it to make a few kind of intro things for my channel, just like little intro clips, but I stopped using those after a while just because I switched to a kind of different style of introducing the videos where I just launch straight into it without like a logo beforehand. But yeah, right. I recommend the program. It's a good one. And of course, yeah, there's plenty of free like raster graphics software out there. GIMP is one I've used as an alternative to Photoshop in the past. And as far as doing a survival guide episode on how to make a custom texture pack, as I said, art isn't really my strong suit. So while I'm interested in getting the information out there and maybe like demystifying the process of how to open up textures and like make edits to them, I'm not sure if I'm going to dedicate a full episode to that, and if I do, it probably won't go much further than providing the basic info. I'm not really interested in making my own texture pack or modifying the vanilla textures a great deal because I like, as I've said before, I think I like the fact that whenever I build anything, it's going to look exactly the same as the way somebody else would build it if they were using a default texture pack. And, you know, I prefer to do things that way so that people can follow along a little easier. But yeah, I would like to do an episode about the technical side of that, if not the artistic side of it.
I've mentioned Uncle Jam on the show before, and his YouTube channel, which we'll link in the show notes, has a tutorial series on how to create a resource pack side of the custom texture. So less about the art of the textures and more about just how to just grab something and stick it into Minecraft.
Yeah.
The tutorials are a couple years old, so you'd have to take a look at the file directory and the file names for the textures because they changed when they rolled over into 1.13.
Yes.
But the principle is still the same. You just have to combine the current structure of the game with the version of Minecraft that you're playing. Sorry, combine the current structure of the version of Minecraft you're playing with the tutorial information from Uncle Jam. There's also a tutorial article we'll link for the Minecraft wiki here in the show notes, which covers the kind of stuff that is out of date on the Uncle Jam videos.
The restructuring of stuff on the back end, the flattening, as it was called in 1.13, is another reason I wanted to cover the structure blocks in today's episode of Survival Guide, actually, because I'd made a tutorial about that a while ago, but they have since changed the directory where those structure block files are stored. So a lot of people were leaving comments on my old structure block videos saying, this doesn't work anymore, like I can't get it to work that way. So yeah, it's tripped a few people up, but good to know that there are resources out there that will probably be updated, especially in the case of the Minecraft wiki, for finding where that stuff is stored. Moving on to the next email, we have one here from Crystal Alpaca. This one's about Minecraft Earth. It says, "Hi, Johnny and Joel. I was listening to episode 63 and had some thoughts about Minecraft Earth. I'm a disabled person who has mobility issues and various chronic health issues. To make an example of Pokemon Go, I find it a huge pain, sometimes literally, to get to events such as raids without planning ahead. Hatching eggs is also an issue, and often takes more than a week even though I play most days, because that's something that tracks how far you've traveled. My concern with Minecraft Earth is that it's going to turn into the same situation for those who are disabled that aren't hugely independent or find it difficult to leave the house for various reasons. If there were an item trading portion to the game that would maybe help with collectibles, that still doesn't get disabled players to events without relying on other people to help you get there. I've seen Good Times with Scars video, and it seems like you can collect some resources from the car, but again, especially for children, it relies on someone else to get you around. Hope I got my point across okay, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Keep up the great podcast. Thanks, Crystal Alpaca." Thank you for sharing your experience, Crystal Alpaca. I've been able to get an adequate amount of tappable resources from home, and granted that I am in a suburban area which seems to have a decent amount of activity, but you're right in that some of the deeper aspects of the app and some of the stuff that I said previously is really the point of the app, stuff like adventures, aren't really all that accessible to people with mobility issues, which is a real shame. There are no adventures near my house. They don't tend to spawn near like large clusters of houses. They tend to be more in places like public parks and stuff that's accessible to pedestrians, rather than having you walk around people's neighborhoods or something just so you can play Minecraft adventures. But you can't really get to those places if you have mobility issues, and you can't navigate an adventure without moving around once you're there. So yeah, for people who do have a little bit of trouble and want to just like post up in one spot and play an adventure, you can't then move around all that much to be able to get an angle on what you're looking at in AR. And I wonder if maybe like a teleport movement feature for adventures would be possible. Kind of similar to if you've seen VR games played where they have a movement style that basically has you teleport from one standing location to another standing location in order to prevent motion sickness, because your brain doesn't realize that your body isn't moving when you're like trying to move forward using a gamepad or something like that, and that can make people kind of dizzy and get motion sickness. So they implement this teleporting thing, and I kind of wonder if it would be possible to like give disabled players the option to like ender pearl around an adventure, maybe without the damage penalty that's incurred from ender pearls in regular Minecraft, because that wouldn't be a great message. But I kind of wonder, yeah, if it would be possible to explore adventures that way without having to, you know, stand up and walk around if that's uncomfortable for you or not possible, or or without having to, just stroll around the area where the adventure takes place, but still be able to interact with that stuff. And I'm sure with the game still being in early access, there is plenty of time to give feedback on stuff like this. So I would encourage you to do that. If you're comfortable sharing your experiences with apps like this, then get in touch with Mojang. The Minecraft.net feedback page has a bunch of suggestions on it already. I think some of them are related to accessibility features and stuff like that. So now, if at all, is probably the time to get your suggestions in.
And if I recall from your video about adventures, you really have to get right up on top of them. And if they're not right next to a path, depending on your mobility issues, whether it's maybe you've got a sprained ankle and you're on crutches, or maybe you're in a wheelchair for most of your time, taking that wheelchair off road may not be the easiest thing, even in a park where the grass is relatively flat. Maybe it's too wet, maybe it's too slippery and dangerous. Like if you can't access the adventure because you're more than 10 feet away, that's going to be pretty frustrating, I think, for some players that have mobility issues.
Yeah, and especially with adventures being the gateway to resources like iron and gold and like some of the materials that are required for progression and for completion of some of the challenges in the game. There is still actually on that challenges page where you have your daily, weekly, and career quests, just little activities to do and stuff. I think there is a fourth tab there that is event challenges, and they don't seem to have rolled that out yet. That seems to be something that's going to come later, and I don't think it's tied into stuff like the Jolly Llama event that's happening in London and Sydney and everywhere. I think that's potentially going to be something that comes in later, and it's more like when the legendary Pokemon appeared in Pokemon Go, and you can go to specific places to get those, and raids happen and stuff like that. I'm not sure how event-related challenges are going to work, but hopefully when those do turn up, they're going to keep accessibility in mind, because there's going to be a large portion of the app where people won't really be able to go out and experience that if they are disabled.
So moving on to the next email, we have one from Mr. Junior 717. Hey, Spawn Chunkers, that's a new one. I haven't heard that before. In episode 63, around 57 minutes, Pixariffs talks about a camera using mirrors to reflect the image the right way up. This isn't the case. Since mirrorless cameras exist and basically every camera can be mirrorless, the big difference is the viewfinder. A DSLR uses mirrors to redirect the view to your eye. When you take a picture, the mirror flips and reveals the sensor to the view. A so-called mirrorless camera uses the sensor's readings in its viewfinder, electric or whatever. So no mirrors are actually used for taking the picture. The flipping happens after the picture has been taken. Here's a diagram of a typical camera. We'll include this link in Mr. Junior's email. Hope you find this helpful, and thanks for making this epic show. Cheers.
Thank you for putting me on blast, and I thought it'd be funny to make Joel read this one, because, yeah, this is the wagging finger of people who know more about cameras than I do. No, thank you, in all seriousness, thank you for the correction. I freely admit to not being a camera expert. Mostly what I was trying to do with this example was explain the camera obscura effect in an accessible way, which OMG Chad actually does in his latest episode of OMG Craft that he made about Minecraft with RTX. He's gone to the NVIDIA headquarters in the States and has had a similar experience and sat down and went over a lot more of the technical detail than I did. He's spoken to the NVIDIA developers a little bit more and actually written down word for word what they've said. So his, if you've seen my video about them, his video about RTX is actually really good. But he goes into the camera obscura effect a little bit more, just the fact that when light goes through a small gap, like a pinhole or a 1x1 block in the case of Minecraft, it actually reflects, and the image that is coming through the hole from one side with the light behind it gets reflected upside down. And I thought that was potentially how, cameras with mirrors were originally figured out. But I guess that's not actually the case, but it's... just an example that I thought might add a little bit of, I guess, visual idea of how what I was trying to describe works, because I don't know how many people have heard of camera obscura, and I certainly hadn't. I didn't know too much about it until I started looking up what this effect was. So, thanks for the correction, though. I appreciate it. Moving on to the next email, though, we have one from Cyberfolk. With a PH, nice, which is about the October Roundtable discussion about a feature light update. It says, greetings. Regarding the release cycle of having a more content light update prior to a more feature-rich release coming up with the Nether update, if Mojang is committed to trying to do 2 major releases per year, as they've said, I think this is actually a really good thing. It gives the developers the chance to proactively address issues in a good way. For example, Nether Portal caching is being fixed in 1.15, And lo and behold, the Nether update is coming up shortly afterwards. Hopefully this will avoid things like the lag issues from flowing water that came with 1.13 and the myriad grotesque issues that came around with 1.14. I wouldn't be surprised to see some things in the technical release notes of the next update that will lead directly into future updates. Perhaps something like bee pathfinding and the fact that they remember flower locations as well as return to a home, which might be a different implementation of a bug with 1.14 villagers and their bed/workstation arrangement, given that they have a nasty habit of forgetting the workstations. Perhaps the piglins and villagers will make use of the bees' ability to find and remember a home. As well, I suspect it might be in our best interest that we have to wait for the mountain biome update if it's going to use any changes that come with the Nether update for terrain generation. Thanks for making such a great show. I only stumbled across it a month ago or so, and am now going through the whole back catalogue, which is making my work commute so much more bearable. Thank you, Cyberfolk, for that one. It hadn't occurred to me that fixing existing Nether issues would be a good call ahead of the Nether update, but that's an excellent point. I think a point well made, because Nether portal caching is, I believe, that kind of momentary lag that you experience when going through into the Nether, and I think it's something to do with the way the game loads in the area around a Nether portal whenever you travel through it. I really should have looked this up in more detail before we got to this email, but if bugs like that are being fixed and people are expected to visit the Nether more in the Nether update, it's going to make everyone's experience a lot more pleasant.
So I was looking through our Discord with the hive mind, pardon the pun, in there, and the lag thing with Nether portals appears to be that they are no longer going to be searching in a 120 block radius every time you go through them.
Right.
And so there'll be more. If they're linked, they're going to be sending you directly to the known link. I think that's my interpretation. I went through the Discord quite quickly. There was a lot of information there, but that to me is good. But also, I just spent the last few weeks moving some Nether portals around and fixing them because of the orientation change that happened in 1.14, where when you enter a portal facing west, you exit in the Nether also facing west, which is good. That's where you want to go. But at the same time, if you're adjusting all your Nether portals and then they change it again, that would start to be a little bit frustrating for players. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to affect people that are utilizing a portal connection where that portal connection is not exact. It's working because the portal is searching for a new a working portal within 120 blocks. So I don't know whether you're just going to end up with needing to move things in the Nether or what. But it's an interesting idea. I really like the point about bees finding a home base and how that has been written from scratch. And maybe it could end up being retconned back into villager pathfinding and memory to improve that play experience. I feel like it would be easier to fix a bug with a villager if you've done the same behavior in a new mob, but then it's not buggy because you're not copying, pasting that behavior, like you're writing it from scratch. So things that they may learn, and again, this is speculation, from designing the bee behavior could be implemented as Cyberfolk mentioned in Piglin, Zombie Piglin, maybe even Piglin Beasts, which are now, what are they called?
Hoglins.
Hoglin. So yeah, there's potential there for different kind of pathfinding. Something that I did not think of, which I'm glad that they brought up as well, is getting the new terrain generation working in the Nether ahead of the mountains update is also a really good point. Let's face it, the Nether is a jumbled mess. Anything will be seen as an improvement. So it's a good place to test. You could be testing your terrain generation for the overworld, which when it went terribly wrong in the overworld, everyone would say, woof, this is buggy. But in the Nether, it's just going to look better. Because right now, it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to anything really in the Nether outside of maybe lava lakes. Those are the only things that seem to be features. I feel like that would be a really interesting idea of fixing the terrain generation in a world where you have a lot of room for error, you have a lot of room to play with, but then fine-tuning it so that when you try to implement it in the overworld, you've learned some lessons from the Nether update. It's a really interesting take.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on to some comments from our YouTube family, because we've been posting the podcast to YouTube for a little while now, and we get some interesting comments coming through, specifically, in this case, a comment from Lorimer Longhaul on episode 65, Adventures in Minecraft Earth, which says, thanks for the great episode. Just to clarify a few things. Multiple players can play adventures at the same time. I also believe you can start an adventure, leave it if your health is low, then re-enter it in the same state. So that's when adventures will show up as not being pristine and the first time you visited them. Also, build plates have a build mode as well as a play mode. Play mode is a standalone instance where changes made by participants aren't saved, i.e. players can break everything, but once everyone exits, it goes back to the original state. I presume player builds placed out in the world will be this way, so any changes will reset per visit. And this was interesting to me. This was something I had trouble articulating, I think, at the time, because we were talking about what happens if I place a build publicly and then everyone else comes along and mines out the blocks. I assume what they would show up as on the map would be icons like the adventures that you join, rather than it being like, you know, a little 8x8 build plate that appears on your map. It's just going to be an icon of a player-placed build. You click on that, and then when it loads up, it's my build that I put into the world. And then whatever you do in that isn't going to affect what other players would see if they visited the same thing. So if you want to take down this house that I've built on the Brighton seafront or something, then you can run away with all of those materials, but when the next player comes along and checks out my build, they're going to see the build as it was before you tore everything down. What that brings up, though, is a problem with my scavenger hunt idea, because in theory, then you could go and farm that player-placed build for diamonds. But
Right.
it would depend how often those things refreshed, though, because if you visited it once before, you took the diamond, you run away, maybe it like goes away and then refreshes 5 minutes later, you get another diamond, that's a problem. But if you go back to a player-placed build and it's always the build that you visited the first time around, so if you've destroyed it, it remains destroyed. That's kind of interesting to me. I like that as an idea.
It's cool. I don't know how that. I guess they would have to cache that. Like they'd have to say that, well, this build is this way for this player. But now imagine that you come up to a public build and take 2 blocks, and I come up to a public build and the same public build and I take 4 blocks. It has to remember those different states for each of us. Multiply
Yes.
that by however many people visit, and I see that being an issue. I would imagine it's probably more along the lines of, I don't think you're going to be able to collect the blocks from a plate, from a public plate. I think you can probably destroy it. I think you can probably interact with it, but I think that you don't get to keep any of it.
Or-
That's probably my interpretation.
Or alternatively, you place something, but you put it there for a limited amount of time. So the way they get around that, presumably with adventures, is having the adventures on a timer, and after a certain amount of time, they're going to reset. So if I put a build out in public, it's only going to last for like a day or a couple of days, and then whatever save data people have from that structure, it goes away again. I get the build plate back on my device, I get to build something else with it, and I can put it down somewhere else. Kind of like, again, bringing it all back to Pokemon Go, but that is, once again, one of the best examples we have of an app like this. When you left your Pokemon on a gym defending it, it would basically stay there until another player beat that Pokemon, and then it would be returned to your inventory.
Oh, okay.
so-
So when you place a build plate in the world from Minecraft Earth, do you no longer have access to that build plate at home?
No, that's not the case. But then I think if you were placing it publicly, it wouldn't be the case that you could modify it on your device, and that would modify the instance of it that was out in the world. This is really difficult to talk about because we're speculating about stuff that hasn't been added to the app
Yeah,
yet. But
yeah.
I get the idea that like if you were able to modify that build plate at home, it wouldn't make any changes to the one you'd put out in the world regardless. But yeah, I feel like maybe if you placed it in one place, it would be kind of spammy to just be able to place it all over the place in the same area. I imagine there will be a limit to how many of those you can have out in the world at one time.
Yeah. It would be really interesting, though, if you got together with a bunch of friends, you all had an 8x8 build plate, and you decided to put them all next to one another.
That's another thing that I've seen people suggest, is having the ability to snap build plates together, and whether or not they remain environments that you can only edit yourself if you're like the owner of it, if you're building in you know, creative build mode, but then have them be able to fit together on a tabletop if you're playing with multiple people, so that then they could be put together to make a landscape, and then you have people collaborating on something that is larger than an 8x8 plate.
Yeah,
I think
like you build one end of the bridge, you know, my friend John builds the other, and then I build the middle, right?
Yeah, that kind of thing would be really cool. I think ultimately it comes down to the limitations of what they would be able to display on your device at one time. And that's probably why build plates are restricted to 8x8 or 16x16 for now, is because on lower end devices, I can imagine it putting a lot of strain. If you had like 12 people all working around the same table, it's got to render 12 of these build plates at once. I expect that would be very taxing on some lower end devices.
Yeah. So I've not been able to experience this because I haven't tried to place anything out in the world, but do you need an 8x8 meter flat area to put a build plate down?
No, not at all.
So it's not full of Minecraft scale then?
I mean, it is, but I think it's all relative to the position of your camera. It's all about perspective, really.
Okay.
I don't know for certain. Like, I haven't measured it or anything. But then when Seth Bling was making videos where he was like running from one end of a courtyard to the other and triggering pressure plates in his build plate, I think that was all relative to the position of whoever was holding the camera. So it can be kind of tricky to track exactly what the scale is. I think the scale is more or less, what you've got room for, but it won't resize it necessarily if you've got less space. But I think it isn't necessarily going to be like 1 meter scale to 1 meter in the real world. It depends how far away you're placing it and that kind of stuff. It's tricky to measure that stuff, though, because you're talking about measuring something in real space that only exists virtually on your phone. It'd be interesting to go out there with a tape measure and see if you could you could figure that out.
Because I'm thinking, like, in some of the videos that I've seen on YouTube, people are walking inside their Minecraft build that they've placed out in the world, and that works if the door is 2 meters tall, but it doesn't if it's a meter. Like if it's only a 2 foot tall door, I'm not going inside, not without hitting my head, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the player's scale, and I think depending on how tall you are, how far your phone is away from the ground. Like I don't know precisely what the AR technology is using to track that stuff, but I placed the rustic house that I built in my backyard. It was taller than my house. And I don't know quite how tall my house is, but the peak of this rustic house was probably like 17 or 18 blocks. So we can presume 17 or 18 meters tall in the VR, in the sort of AR space. It's not small. Like, it definitely shows up like it is to scale or close enough. I just don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I've said for a long time that scale in Minecraft is wonky. Like, everything at the player level and roughly 2 to 4 blocks above that is about right. But then after that, roofs and things have to be like double sized to look right. Otherwise, they just don't work because of the blocks in Minecraft. Like, just it's this weird kind of Minecraft scale, quote unquote, has developed over years.
Yeah, it's something we're still getting used to, and I imagine we'll have to get used to it in Minecraft Earth as well. Folks, that's going to be all we have time for today. Thank you once again to everyone who emailed in to the show and the folks who left lovely comments on YouTube for us to read. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the things we've talked about at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show is composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join the community, where pledging at any level will get you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat and gets us closer to our next milestone goals. We are currently at 139 patrons, which is up from last week once again. Thank you so much, new folks, for joining in, and of course, we've always got room for more. Special thanks go out to our content engineers, Cameron Sigelski, Greena Canuck, JD Williamson, and Yitz for supporting this episode.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. You can just tell them to go to The Spawn Chunks on Twitter or Instagram. But of course, a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast. Just poke a friend in the arm or poke a server mate in the arm and say, hey, you like Minecraft, I like Minecraft, they like Minecraft. Go listen to them talk about Minecraft. You might be surprised. The email for the show is thespawnchunks@gmail.com. You can subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify. And of course, leave us a review if you're out there. It always helps reach new listeners. The RSS feed is linked on thespawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by PixelRiffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/PixelRiffs, where I attempt to make sense of this crazy and wonderful game in a series called The Minecraft Survival Guide. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide, and I'm the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. Aside from that, I'm at PixelRiffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything I am doing online is at joelduggan.com. That includes my illustration and design portfolio as well as my online store. So if you're looking for some ideas for Christmas gifts, you can check that stuff out there. You can listen to The Citadel Cafe, a podcast where I talk about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment with my friends. That is right now focusing on The Mandalorian. So if you're curious about that, we are doing some spoiler-free chat there. You can follow me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all just my name, super easy to find. Come hang out in the nether and brighten my day. That's at twitch.tv/JoelDuggan. And if you're curious about what I'm going to be up to, check out the Render Distance, where I'm going to be talking about my new PC and the new games.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and so is our inbox.